Hey, Steve, who are you?
Well, I'm a coach, Eric.
Oh, is that it?
Well, I'm a trainer too. What about you? Who are you, Eric?
Yeah, well, I'm a coach too.
Hmm. Is that all you are?
Well, no. So we're actually a lot more than these things, aren't we?
Yeah, we certainly are. So more on that in a moment. But first, hello, I'm Steve.
And I'm Eric. And together we are two dads with one mission.
Welcome to the 𝗙𝗃𝗲𝗃 podcast. This is the show for dads, all about fatherhood, faith, and freedom, one conversation at a time.
So on this episode, have you ever thought about who you are beyond what you do for a living?
And well, that's exactly what we're going to help you with on this week's show. So where we're going to explore who you really are aside from what you do.
Yeah, I love this topic because, like the title of the show, right, or the episode, no matter who you think you are, you're always more than that. So if you ask somebody, who are you? I mean, in fact, I would challenge you, try it. The next time there's an opportunity, ask somebody that question and don't qualify it and don't try to explain it after you ask it. Just ask it and leave it hang in the air and see how somebody responds to it. It's extremely revealing.
Yeah, so perhaps our audience can do that now, Eric. So, really think about that. Take a moment, listeners, to just deeply consider, who are you?
Yeah. So while you're considering that, I'm curious, Steve, what do you find when you ask that, or if somebody asks you who you are? No, let me ask it this way. How do you think people really tend to answer that? Well, let's narrow it down to men, right? Like, how do they answer that question typically when they're challenged as to who they are?
Yeah, for me, I think it's a really interesting question, and I think it comes from almost like cultural conditioning.
Yeah.
So we're conditioned to respond to that type of question with who we are. So a name, or perhaps our vocation, our job, our career. So what we do or who we are. So if I go, so who are you? Well, I'm Steve. It's like, well, who are you? And it's, well, yeah, I'm a coach, I'm a trainer. So I think we're culturally conditioned to answer it in a specific way
Well, let's
because
think about this for a second. Where does that cultural conditioning come from? So what's that very stereotypical question that parents ask their young children? It's, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not
exactly.
not who do you want to be when you grow up, but what do you want to be? And I
Yeah,
think it starts there, among other reasons, but that's a
yeah,
big cultural conditioning area.
yeah. And the full title of obviously the podcast today is, no matter who you think you are, you're always more than that.
Always more
And
than
it's
that.
that you're always more than that, which is what we're challenging you to think beyond, who you think you are right now. Because, many people would respond to, well, I'm just gonna expand it. So I'm Steve, I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, I'm a father, I'm, I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm an inspiration to some people.
Yeah,
So
that's a good one.
there's all these things that I am, but beyond all of that, there is so much more that I could be, not just to others, but to the world as a whole. If that
Right.
makes sense,
Yep.
we're going to expand on that, and break that down a little deeper as we carry on with this conversation.
Right. So here's a thought, a little bit of a disruptive thought. When you're experiencing diarrhea, you are not diarrhea. You simply have diarrhea, right?
Mm.
So we were talking about this the other day. So similar to depression, if you say I'm depressed, well, that's not really accurate, right? What's a more accurate way of talking about that, Steve.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is people say that, don't they? You know,
All the time.
we ask them, you know, how are you doing? Oh, I've got anxiety, or I'm depressed, I'm anxious,
Yeah.
you know, I'm unhappy. I'm, you know, you fill in the blank of some sort of emotion, usually a negative emotion that you're feeling right now. So that's how we break it down. It's you're experiencing the symptoms of an emotion that you're feeling, but you give it like an identity level. So who are you? Well, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
And you almost take on the persona of depression.
Right. And
But
that,
just like Eric said a moment ago, you know, the disruptor, you know, you don't say I'm diarrhea. You say I have diarrhea. I have
yeah.
the symptoms of diarrhea. But people say I'm depressed, I'm anxious, you know, I'm unhappy. Whereas no matter who you think you are, unhappy, depressed, anxious, you're so much more than that, because there is a time, you know, there's a time when you're not being depressed and not being anxious. Just think about that for a moment. So who are you when you're not depressed?
Yeah. That's a good question. So the risk here is the way that we talk to ourselves and the things that we say. Our brain hears all that, and then it tries to fulfill it, right?
Mm,
And if we're saying things like "I'm depressed," well, then all the brain's really hearing is something about depression, and it just wants to keep kind of feeding that,
yeah.
you know. And I think that it would be better to say different things, but really, what we're talking about is, you know, that we're more than how we typically identify ourselves, right? And again, I think especially men tend to identify themselves only with things that are outside of themselves, a job, maybe their favorite sports team, and then when life presents challenges, you know, it could be anything from, you know, like you went through a you know, a very emotionally stressful event recently with your child,
Mm,
and if you're only identifying yourself as superficial things outside of yourself, it can just kind of leave you a little bit emotionally shallow, or kind of empty
yeah.
in not knowing who you really are, and what, you know, what roles and what value you bring to the world and to the people that, you know, you care about and that care about you.
No, I totally agree, Eric. And I'd just like to add to that. It's like who you are is not necessarily defined by how much you earn or what you do for a living or the people you surround yourself with
Yeah.
or the symptoms or emotions that you're feeling maybe in the present right now. That's not who you are, because no matter who you think you are, you're always more than that. And
Yep.
I'd like to just throw out maybe another metaphor here, a different way of thinking about it, which comes from, you know, cartography. So map making. But
Mm.
if you think about your life as a map, most people, when you ask them who are you, it's almost like they're static on their map. They're stood maybe on the street, the road, the place that you live. They're a static pin on the map, and their life experience are things they can see from that vantage point on
Mm.
the map, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But no matter who you are, you're always more than that. And the thing with the map has no beginning or an end.
Right.
You can be anywhere on the map. So the metaphor is almost like no matter who you think you are, you're always more than that. You could have a point of view of anywhere else on that map at any moment in time, seeing all those different points of views and vantage points. And let's tie this more into life now. Experiences,
Hmm.
opportunities, possibilities, conversations,
Right.
rather than just being stuck in that place where you live as the pin on the map, the road, the street outside your house.
Yeah.
I hope that kind of metaphor makes sense. Whereas, you know, the map has no beginning or an end. You don't have to be a static pin on the map.
Yeah.
You can be anywhere.
Yeah.
And also not just, you know, it has no beginning or an end, but your life also has metaphorically speaking, no beginning or an end. What I mean is your life up until this point, for whatever reason, you may be really unhappy, but that doesn't mean you can't start over
Right.
now.
You can change your outlook by changing your location on the map, maybe.
Yeah. So now could be the new beginning
Yep.
on who you are. And the
Yep.
end can be anywhere else that you've yet to explore.
Yeah, because people even speak metaphorically about places in life where they're in a deep dark valley, or they'll use different words like they're in this low place, right?
Mm.
And when you're in a low place, you can only see certain things, but you get on the top of the mountain and you can see, not everything, but you can see a whole lot more.
You
And
can
so
certainly see more
possibilities
clearly. Mm.
become more evident. So let's maybe turn to, I don't know, the thing that's on my mind right now is like, why should a guy care? Like, okay, so he defines himself by his job and his favorite sports team and the fact that maybe he's a dad, and that's it. Like, why does that matter? And I think one reason is because, similar to what I said earlier, when life presents challenges or things aren't going the way that you want them to be, or maybe you lose that job. Oh man, how many men have lost their job that they absolutely tied their identity to, and then maybe they can't even get a job in that field anymore.
Mm.
And it just, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've seen men where it completely destroys them emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, it's gut wrenching. I know people. I've actually experienced a period in my life like that. It's when who you think you are is tied to a job or a vocation or a place or a relationship, and it's almost like it's rug pulled. That's pulled away from you. It leaves
Yeah.
this huge void or a black hole, and it leaves you frozen as a man, not really knowing who you are.
Oh yeah, you're
You
lost
don't
for.
know who you are, just turning it back to the map, the cartography again. When you don't know who you are, how do you know where you're going? It's almost like you stood still.
Yeah,
And that can be a terrifying place to be.
absolutely. And this also reminds me of something that, kind of, well, let me just say it. So the question is, would you rather be happy because of circumstances, or would you rather be happy just to be happy? Like, what's a better place to be? And so in our limited time here, I just want to answer that. So if your happiness is based upon circumstances, well, then your happiness can easily just come and go. Whereas if you learn to be happy or content or joyful just because of who you are and how you define yourself, well, then you really become a person that is not at the whim of circumstances. And so when things happen that, go against you, it doesn't, you don't have the highs and lows. A lot of times depression is simply because you didn't get what you expected to get. That's one reason. There's lots of reasons, and we're not necessarily talking about like clinical depression and biological reasons, but more of that, life's not going the way I want it to go kind of thing. And so much of that is present in people because they've connected their joy and contentment and happiness to circumstances. And we all know that as much as we like to control circumstances, it's not always possible, and things happen. People get fired, people get in car accidents, maybe they can't do their job anymore because of, you know, whatever that happened in the car accident. So circumstances happen. And if your joy or happiness is tied to that, well, your life can be up and down. So I don't know. Do you have any closing thoughts on that
Yeah,
too?
I've got some closing thoughts. That's really resonated with me, Eric. And I just want to flip back to your original question. Why as men or dads or both should we care?
Yeah.
And for me, with what you just said there, it's almost I'm reminded like, look, if I flip forward to the future and I'm right at the end of my life,
Hmm.
and I'm sitting there on the porch, in my rocking chair, reflecting on life.
Yeah.
I'm in retirement, and I ask myself that question, who who am I? who really am I? You know, when someone asks me, who are you? And, you know, I reflect back to say, well, you know, I don't really know, but I had a great job. I paid all my bills, you know. That's why we should care. We should care because I don't want to answer that question at the end of my life to say, I was
Yeah.
Steve, I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, and I
Life,
paid all my bills.
life without regrets, right?
Yeah. I'd like to think that I made more of an impact to, you know, hundreds, thousands,
Right.
millions of people, perhaps directly and indirectly,
Sure.
and made a full contribution, you know, to this great world we live in.
Yeah. And I
So
think
those are my closing thoughts.
yeah, at the end of life, that's really ultimately all that matters is who did we help? Who did we change? How did we make the world a better place in some way? So,
Yeah.
hey, listen, we've covered a huge topic in a very short period of time. Um, I feel like in some ways, we did it some justice by, like kind of pointing some light at it, but I also feel like there's so much there that might need to be unraveled in your mind. If you need some help, please reach out to one of us and we'd love to just have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's a wrap on this episode. How can people get a hold of us, Steve?
Yeah, well, there's two things. First of all, in order to get hold of us, the easiest place to find all of our contact details and resources is our website, which is allieddads.com.
Yep.
Second thing, Eric, what's coming up next? We've got something exciting for the next episode.
We do. And it is, well, actually, it's called, oh yeah, I forgot. So, so next episode is Allied Dads Unplugged, and Steve and I are just going to be having a conversation, and we don't know where it's going to go yet. So tune in and see what happens.
Yeah, and perhaps if you want us to talk about anything in, specifically, you have a topic, reach out to us before the next episode. You've got a week to do that. 7
Absolutely.
days from now, we'll be cutting that new episode.
Yep.
And it leaves me to say it's been great having you guys on board again for this episode. You will find us, so please find us and subscribe on your favorite streaming channel.
All right, perfect. Have a great day, you guys.
Yeah, see you on the next episode.